Episode 11 of Muv-Luv Alternative felt like the peeping episode. It just seemed like every shot of somebody talking has somebody watching from a bush or something, and which I understand from the vantage point of, Yuhi, because she needs to be guarded, but it just felt like that convenient everybody's watching in order to be in the conversation thing. So, but yeah, it was an incredible episode, though. I really loved Meia's speech, technically Yuhi's speech, but I honestly thought it was going to end up being Yuhi in the end. Like, it's one of those things where you think that they're swapping places, but then some, off-camera shot, technically Yuhi talked Meia into allowing her to be out there. Technically her words were still out there, but it did lead into some weird shots. Like, I know I'm just completely side tangenting here, but it's one of those things where there was a couple shots in this episode that kind of bugged me. Like, it was like almost a choice by the animators to do it a certain way to either conserve on what they need to do, but like to have this whole sequence where this drape gets put up so they can change and swap outfits. It's like they're trying to make it look like it's slow motion, but it's just like they're just cutting frames basically, so it just doesn't look slow motion. It just looks more like it's just a slideshow. But even still, like, to add on to that, they had this whole thing where this poor Irma girl gets injected by some drug, and right after that sequence where she's getting injected by this, it immediately cuts to showing them they're supposed to be putting on the other person's clothes. And so they decide to take the footage of them taking the clothes off, the silhouette, and just reverse it. And it doesn't look right because you don't look the same when you're putting clothes on that you do when you're taking clothes off. So it ends up looking, bear with me here. We've already established in this world that we have parallel worlds. We've already established in this world that Shirogane is going back in time, so he has knowledge of the future. So it's not going to be any stress. There's maybe a drug in this world that allows people to reverse time. And so my immediate thought when this girl was getting injected was that she was going back in time because it was just basically showing what we just seen, but backwards. So it's like, don't do that to me. Like, I'm gonna believe that that's a thing in this world, so you can't do that to me. I don't know, it's just bad choice, I think, in my opinion, for, I guess, animation side of things. But anyways, start this episode, we had this conversation between Tama and this girl who's, we find out later, is from Finland, who is in the American Army. Tama's obviously apologizing because we just had this conversation with Major, and the Major was pretty much pointing out that it's Japan's fault they're there and they're losing their people. So she's obviously upset about this. But it seems like it goes even further for her, not just as a foot soldier, but the fact that she has some sort of fault in herself because she's connected to her father, who her father is the one that brought the foreign forces in. So she feels a little bit more of a connection to at fault with this situation. And it's sad because we get this whole thing about, obviously this girl she went into the American forces to get citizenship. She wants to eventually go back to the occupied Finland and basically rebuild her home once they get rid of the beta. So there's all this stuff to kind of build up flagging that eventually it gets really sad later on because obviously she gets drugged with something that's forcing her to attack, which when they show the whole drugging thing, I immediately recalled back to the soldier that fired. And now granted, later on in this episode, we do find out from Sagiri that he believes that there is this involvement that America has to cause this conflict so they can come in and swoop in and save, and he believes that that soldier was employed by the Americans. But I still even think then that the soldier himself was drugged as well because he looks confused. When they stopped him, he looked generally confused, so I'm assuming he got drugged the same way that this Irma girl did, and that caused him to fire, or at least get aggressive. But that sucks, though. I don't really see that ending well with Irma. And honestly, I think, again, they basically have flagged her at the very beginning. And I'm already foreseeing that Tama's going to have to be the one to put her down, and that's just going to ruin Tama in the end, which really does suck. Because, again, she's blaming herself for the situation. Even though she's not directly tied to the situation, she's blaming herself because it's her father. And even in this situation, she's struggling because she believes that her father's involved. That her father, even before Sagiri brings up the involvements of the Americans and this idea of bringing the Americans in to occupy and take over, which has technically been a conversation before, just not to the extent that Sagiri's bringing up. But she believes that her father might not have been doing it for the betterment of Japan, but that he was instigating this giving up of Japan, which I guess is either way is the same reasoning, but the outcome's different. The reasoning is to save the people of Japan. His foremost thought is to save the people of Japan. He feels this is the only way is to bring in foreign powers. But is it to the extent that he's instigating it and causing it to happen? That's her fear. But in the end, I love this conversation, and I'm hoping that it'll lead to more stuff later on, again, if she's the one that's involved with taking down Irma, because we're seeing a more serious side of Tama. Now, Tama's cute. She's adorable. She's the lolly character of the show, and I feel like all of our developments that has been in her has been strictly around goofiness, her goofy nature, having her father come in and her acting like she's the leader and everything like that of her squad. This is a more serious side of her, the insecure side of her that I was really looking forward to, and I'm glad that they got this in here. But this gets into a conversation between Shirogane and Yuhi. Yuhi brings him in and kind of asks him about the whole drug situation, why didn't you administer it, and really kind of acknowledging the why he did it, but turning it on his head and saying that she's kind of just wanting to make sure that in the end, when the time comes, he doesn't hesitate. Because obviously with that situation, he was hesitating and it was costing the lives of people. But this turns into a conversation about patriotism, which I think is really kind of a crux of conversation throughout this entire episode has been patriotism. It was even a little bit in Tama's conversation with Irma. It's in this conversation between Shirogane and Yuhi in that he's trying to figure out what patriotism is. And it really does seem like it goes from him believing that patriotism is about government, it's about institutions and stuff. And as they're going through this conversation, he's talking about the patriotism of every single person. He's acknowledging Sagiri's patriotism. He's acknowledging the connection that each of his squadron has to patriotism. And it really is technically connecting it in that each one of these members of his squad have somebody within the government, and he believes that to be the patriotism. Like they're a part of the government. They're doing things for the government that takes care of the people. And this shifts from him realizing that it's not about them being connected to the government that makes them, a patriot, but more of their connection to the people, their vested interest in the good of the people, which technically, if you could argue, should be the thing. Like the argument can be that the government should be of the people. It should be the best government should be of the people for the people. Because they have a vested interest in their own selves. They have the vested interest in the good of the people, not the government, the institution itself. But of course, this makes Yuhi realize, wait, they're what? like she just realizes that, wait. And this is technically something we talked about previously with this whole working behind the scenes thing, was that there was a reason why all these girls who were daughters of these important people were at this UN base. And she realizes really quickly, okay, these are important people. Bring them all together. And they have this big meeting where, this is a great scene because it has Yuhi really, this is where you see, once again, the heart of Yuhi. Like, it seems like this entire series, if we can establish anything, especially over the last few episodes, is that Yuhi is like this beacon of hope, like this pure distillation of heart that, like this messiah that is nothing but heart, that only thinks about the people, because we have this whole scene where she's literally going through every single person and saying how amazing they are. She basically points out to the Americans, I'm sorry that this happened. She bows to them. She gets to talking about each one of the girls and how great and incredible their fathers was. Even going to, Ayamine and saying, essentially, your father, despite everything that happened there, his words are within me. Like, I keep his words within myself, and she even recounts some of those words. She's literally the supreme selfless. Yeah, that is Yuhi. And this kind of extends to her conversation, or at least the words that she gives Maya to give to Sagiri. Because, yeah, that's the conclusion she comes to, is that, despite even Sagiri and them doing something incredible, she can't let it stand. She has to go out there and talk to him, and then that's when Maya comes in and says, no, look, I'm literally your double. I'll handle this. Let me go out there instead, which she technically agrees. Like I said, I really did think that they weren't going to allow, like, there was going to be a switch. So everybody believes it's Maya on her side, but it's actually Yuhi because she wants to talk to him directly. But again, she technically does word for word give it to Maya. It kind of gives that little idea that she literally memorized this entire speech. But yeah, this was an incredible speech. Like, I loved this scene with Maya talking to Sagiri, because it was almost like it was one of those moments where it was almost felt like she was giving to Sagiri, like, you're doing all these great things. Good job. I know you're doing it for me. Yeah, you're doing incredible. Good job. Pat on the back. But then this one moment where she literally just slaps him across the face. Like, it's that acknowledgement of what he's doing. His core focus is good. Like, he is thinking of the people. He doesn't want the people harmed. the injustice to the people is a good thing. She's acknowledging that. But the problem is, and that's what she slaps him with, is your actions are essentially opposite to what your words are. Your actions are not speaking your words. You are killing the people you're claiming that you're trying to save. It is hypocrisy. You're doing it wrong. And I thought that was great. I thought that was a fantastic speech. And I really did think that he was going to be combative to this. Like, the moment that she starts tearing into him, I thought he was going to be like, no, that's not right. You're not Yuhi. Yuhi would never say that. We're good people. But it's to his character. Like, the fact that he gives in and says, I'm at your service, he realizes her words are true. And it's not only that, because we've already established several times before this whole segment that he acknowledges what she's doing is right. The fact that she's doing this is because she's thinking of the people. She wants to do this because she's pulling the forces away from this zone because she's thinking of collateral damage. Every moment he's thinking, we chose the right person. This is right. We're doing the right thing because she's the perfect person to lead us. The government isn't, she is. And so it makes sense that his mindset is that she is a leader. She is the true king and ruler of this land, and we need to get her on the throne. So it makes sense that he would give in because he's essentially his commander. This is his leader. This is the one that is the throne. And so he's going to give in to her statements. This is her commander reprimanding him for his mistakes, and he can't argue it. She's right. I thought it was great. it was a fantastic scene because it didn't play into the typical villain headstrong person. They've technically never made Sagiri out to be a bad guy. Again, like I said in the last impressions video, they've always played him out, pretty much everybody out to not be the bad guy, except for the beta. We've now established yet that the beta are good people. We've established that all these forces have their own viewpoint of the situation, and they're not wrong. None of them are technically wrong. Now again, she's pointed out to Sagiri that he's not matching his words, but he's not wrong in the end. But yeah, it sucks because like this whole like after thing, and he gives in. You have this brief moment where already that this poor Irma girl's been injected, so this is eventually coming. But it had this brief moment where Maya turns around and looks at Shirogane, and I'm thinking this shot's holding a little bit too long. I'm just waiting for like this beam of laser beam to like shoot across the cockpit, and she just disappears. But no, it just looks like some random explosion. I'm like, okay, good. I was like, this is a total, like, this is set up to be that scene. Like, we've seen this scene before. Don't let it happen. But no, she's fine, technically, for now. But yeah, Irma's going crazy, and she's attacking everything, and I'm not looking forward to that. Now, granted, we've already established that the Americans have, like, these very advanced TSFs, or these robots, and so it's going to be a difficult fight for them. Technically, they have other Americans on their side, but they're not right there. Technically, if they're having this conversation, it should be in a kind of a neutral zone away from the main forces. But I do kind of foresee it being Tama to have to be the one to take her down. Like I said, to kind of circle back to the beginning of this episode, it'll probably end up being Tama that has to take her down. I think that'll suck because I think, like I said before, it's going to just kind of compound on her guilt already. But I think, like I said, this show keeps getting better and better, and which has me really terrified of this ending. I hope it gets an announcement for another season at the end of the next episode. Typically, they sometimes do that. I hope this does because I thank everybody for replying to that question mark I had last episode, because I was really curious, like, is this it? And a lot of people are saying, no, this isn't it. This needs more. And I'm like, okay, yeah, then we need an announcement like now, because it gets better and better. Like the amount of character development we've had in the last few episodes has been astounding. Especially like this episode with Shirogane. Shirogane, yes, it's that whole patriotism, people versus government, institution versus, people. That conversation is being had. Now, I don't 100% fully acknowledge what Shirogane is thinking. There's a little bit of vagueness as to how he's seeing people versus government and individuality and patriotism, but you're obviously seeing something there. Like, I don't want to say that we've always seen Shirogane as pro-government, but at the same time, he never fights. He's never combative against the institutions and the governments. But when you think about situations like Maya's conversation with Shirogane, the moment that I mentioned before where I kind of hated Shirogane and how he responded to Maya's outrage at the relocation of the citizens, it felt like at that point right there, you do have a little bit of a sense of Shirogane seeing the betterment or the greater good in what they were doing, which in a sense was him acknowledging the right choice of the government versus what Maya was preaching about that point, which was the individuality, the citizens themselves having rights. So I do see him shifting a little bit here into realizing that the people themselves is what's important and the citizens themselves being what's important, and not so much the institutions. Realizing that Tama's father is a person that cares for the people, not because he is in the position he is, but because of what he believes in. Yuhi and her always looking out for the people rather than her own position. Sagiri fighting for the individual rights for the people versus the government. He's seeing a lot of fight for the individualism of people versus the institutions. Nobody's talking about improving the UN. Nobody's talking about improving the stance of the Americans. Nobody's talking about wanting to put in another government into Japan versus it being within the goals of Yuhi's control. It's about the people. And I think it's hitting heavy on that for Shirogane. And so we are seeing that in that improvement of his character. And that's what I've been looking for, and I think that's what the show's giving me right now. But anyways, this is technically my third time recording this. The first time I recorded it, and it was a really fantastic recording, so hopefully this was a good recording. I accidentally hit the echo effects button on my soundboard and ruined the entire recording, and so I hate re-recording stuff so much because I feel like either I miss stuff or I don't say it as well. But that's my thoughts on everything for the third time. Hope you guys enjoy this video. As always, I appreciate everybody and their feedback every single week. This has been a fantastic ride just because of how many people have read the source material and have been, I don't know why, enjoying my feedback on what I thought of the show itself. Some people going, wow, I can't believe you caught that because they completely made that vague or didn't explain that properly, but it's been a fun ride. I hope you guys enjoy this video as always. I hope you guys join me for next week for the finale. Hopefully it's not the complete finale. I hope we get another announcement, but yeah. Definitely appreciate everybody and their support. If you like this video, definitely don't forget to hit that like button down below. Definitely appreciate everybody doing that. Subscribe if you haven't already. Share this video if you can. Support us on Patreon or in the tips link in the description below. Definitely appreciate everybody that does. And y'all take care.